The signal traveled through the cold emptiness of space for 3 days before anyone heard it. It was not a complicated message. It did not contain complex codes or hidden meanings. It was simply the sound of a mother crying for her children, translated into 1,000 languages and broadcast on every frequency the Veloxy possessed. The message said the same thing over and over again. Please help us. Our world is dying. Our children have nowhere to go. We are begging anyone who can hear this. Please. First speaker. Thessaly stood on the balcony of her government building and watched the sky. The asteroid swarm was still too far away to see with naked eyes, but she knew it was there. Thousands of rocks, some as large as mountains, were falling toward her world. Her scientists said they had 23 days. 23 days before the first impacts, 23 days before her civilization ended. The Veloxy were not a powerful species. They had developed space travel only 400 years ago. Their ships were slow, their weapons were weak. They had joined the Galactic Concord as a minor member, paying their fees and following the rules and hoping the great powers would protect them if danger ever came. Now danger had come, and the great powers were silent. Thessaly turned away from the sky and walked back into the council chamber. Her advisors sat around a long table, their faces gray with exhaustion and fear. They had been working without sleep for 6 days, trying to find any solution that might save their people. What news from the Concord? Thessaly asked. Elder Venix, her chief diplomat, shook his head slowly. The Rathani Dominion says intervention would be too costly. The Corvalli Collective expressed sympathy, but cited resource limitations. The Synth Network did not respond at all. And the others? The same. All of them the same. Venix's voice cracked. They have calculated the cost of saving us, and they have decided we are not worth it. Thessaly closed her eyes. She had known this would happen. The Galactic Concord was not built on kindness or justice. It was built on trade agreements and mutual profit. The Veloxy had nothing to offer that would make their rescue worthwhile. Continue the evacuations, she said quietly. Get as many people off-world as possible. Our colony on Veloxy Minor can take perhaps 200,000. The orbital stations can hold another 50,000. And the rest? Venix asked. There are 4 billion people on this world. Thessaly did not answer. There was nothing to say. 3,000 light-years away, in a small listening station on the edge of human-controlled space, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee and reviewing the night signal logs. The station was quiet. It was always quiet. Chen and her crew of 12 were stationed here to monitor Concord communications and watch for any signs of trouble. In the 3 years she had commanded this post, the most exciting thing that happened was a solar flare that knocked out their secondary antenna. She was about to end her shift when her communications officer, a young man named Torres, called out from his station. Commander, I have something strange here. Broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Wide spectrum. Source? Chen asked, walking over to his console. Unknown species. Translating now. Torres pressed a button, and the message played through the station's speakers. It was a voice. Female, perhaps, though Chen could not be sure. The words were not in any human language, but the translation software converted them in real time. Please help us. Our world is dying. Our children have nowhere to go. We are begging anyone who can hear this. Please. Chen felt something cold move through her chest. She had heard distress calls before. This was different. This was not a ship in trouble or a colony facing a temporary crisis. This was an entire world screaming into the void. Get me everything on this signal, she said. Source, species, situation, everything. It took Torres 2 hours to compile the report. The species was called the Veloxy. They were members of the Galactic Concord. Their homeworld was directly in the path of an asteroid swarm that would begin impacting in approximately 20 standard days. The swarm was too large and too fast for the Veloxy to stop on their own. What about the Concord? Chen asked. Why aren't they helping? Torres pulled up another file. I intercepted some Concord diplomatic traffic. The major powers voted yesterday. They decided not to intervene. They voted to let 4 billion people die? Yes, ma'am. Chen stood very still for a long moment. Then she walked to her own console and opened a priority channel to Earth Command. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, listening post 17. I am declaring a Category 1 humanitarian emergency and requesting immediate escalation to the United Earth Council. I am transmitting all relevant data now." She paused, then added, "Someone needs to see this. Someone who gives a damn." The message reached Earth 6 hours later. It passed through 3 levels of military review before landing on the desk of Admiral James Okonkwo, commander of the United Earth Defense Force. Okonkwo was 63 years old. He had served in 3 conflicts and commanded humanity's first interstellar carrier group. He had seen things that would haunt him until he died. But when he listened to the Veloxy distress call, he felt something he had not felt in years. He felt angry, not the cold professional anger of a military commander. This was something older, something human. The anger of a man hearing a child cry for help while adults stood by and did nothing. He took the message to the United Earth Council himself. The council chamber was a circular room with seats for the representatives of Earth's 12 continental governments. They were politicians and diplomats, trained to think in terms of treaties and trade agreements and long-term strategic interests. Okonkwo played them the Veloxy message. Then he showed them the Concorde's response. "They voted to let them die," he said. 4 billion people, and the great powers of the galaxy did the math and decided it wasn't worth the trouble to save them. Council President Yuki Tanaka leaned forward. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "Full mobilization. Every ship we have. We go to Veloxy Prime, and we stop that swarm ourselves." The chamber erupted in argument. Representatives shouted about treaties and diplomatic consequences and the risk of war with the Concorde. They talked about resources and logistics and the impossibility of reaching Veloxy Prime in time. Okonkwo waited until they finished. Then he spoke again. "I know the risks. I know what this could cost us. But I want everyone in this room to understand something. Right now, there is a mother on Veloxy Prime looking at the sky and wondering how she is going to tell her children that no one is coming to save them. Right now, the entire galaxy is watching to see if anyone cares enough to act." He looked around the room, meeting each representative's eyes. "We can be the ones who cared, or we can be like everyone else." President Tanaka called for a vote. It was not close. 12 hours after Lieutenant Commander Chen sent her message, the United Earth Council declared a full military mobilization for humanitarian purposes. Every human warship, every transport, every vessel capable of making the journey was ordered to assemble at Staging Point Alpha. The Galactic Concorde received notification of humanity's intent through official diplomatic channels. The message was simple and direct. The United Earth government has become aware of the crisis facing the Veloxy people. We are mobilizing our fleet to provide assistance. We expect to arrive at Veloxy Prime within 12 standard cycles. We ask that all Concorde vessels stay clear of our operational area. We do not want any misunderstandings. The Concorde ambassadors read the message with confusion that slowly turned to disbelief. The humans were mobilizing everything? For a species they had never met? A species that had nothing to offer them? On the Concorde's central station, a diplomatic AI began calculating response times and fleet compositions. The numbers it produced made no sense. The human fleet was too large. Their ships were moving too fast. They were pushing their vessels beyond safe operational limits. The AI flagged the data for senior review with a single notation. "Human behavior does not match established patterns. Recommend caution." In the darkness of space, human ships began appearing from hidden shipyards and secret bases. Ships the Concorde had never seen, weapon systems that had been carefully kept from alien eyes. The full strength of a species that had learned long ago to hide its true capabilities. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Defiance, and watched his fleet assemble. 200 warships, 50 support vessels, crews who had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. His executive officer approached with a datapad. "Sir, fleet assembly is complete. All ships report ready for slipspace transition." Okonkwo nodded. "Send to all ships. We are going to Veloxy Prime. We are going to stop that swarm. And we are going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone asks for help." He paused, then added quietly, "Tell them we're not leaving anyone behind. Not this time, not ever." The fleet entered slipspace in perfect formation, 200 points of light stretching into infinity and vanishing into the dark. On the conquered central station, the diplomatic AI updated its calculations with something that might have been alarm if machines could feel such things. The humans were not just coming, they were coming fast. The Galactic Concord had watched humanity for 200 years. They had observed the young species carefully, noting their rapid technological progress and their strange emotional behaviors. Humans formed attachments easily. They fought wars over ideas. They built monuments to people who had died saving strangers. The Concord found this both fascinating and slightly concerning. But they had never considered humans a threat. The species was too young, too small, too primitive to matter in the great game of galactic politics. Now, as Concord sensors tracked the human fleet moving through slipspace, the great powers began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. "These readings cannot be correct," said High Coordinator Vexus of the Rathani Dominion. He was standing in the Concord's central command chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing fleet movements across the galaxy. "The humans are traveling at speeds our own ships cannot match." "The readings are correct," replied the synth representative, a chrome-plated figure that spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "We have verified them through multiple sensor arrays. The human vessels are operating at 140% of their rated maximum velocity. That should destroy their engines." "Yes, it should." Across the chamber, the other Concord representatives exchanged worried glances. The Corvalli ambassador, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, spoke carefully. "Perhaps we should reconsider our position regarding the Veloxy. If we dispatch our own relief force—" "Too late," the synth interrupted. "Human vessels will arrive at Veloxy Prime in 11 cycles. Our nearest response fleet would require 23 cycles to reach the same location." High Coordinator Vexus felt something he had not experienced in decades. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. "How did they hide this capability from us?" he demanded. "We have monitored human space for 2 centuries. We have counted their ships. We know their technology." "Apparently," the synth said, "we do not." In the slipspace corridor between Earth and Veloxy Prime, Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Defiance and reviewed the latest tactical updates. His fleet had grown since leaving Earth. Ships from human colonies had joined the formation at every staging point. The mining corporations had sent their heavy haulers, modified with weapon systems that technically violated a dozen Concord treaties. The research stations had contributed vessels equipped with experimental technology that had never been tested in combat. Okonkwo did not know if it would be enough. The asteroid swarm approaching Veloxy Prime was vast beyond anything humans had ever faced. Thousands of rocks ranging from the size of houses to the size of cities, all moving at tremendous speed, all aimed at a single world. His science officer, a young woman named Dr. Rivera, had run the numbers. They were not encouraging. "Sir, even if we destroy 90% of the swarm, enough debris will reach the surface to cause extinction-level damage." "Then we destroy 99%, Okonkwo said. "Sir, that would require—" "I know what it requires." The Admiral turned to face her. "It requires us to do the impossible. That's what we do." On Veloxy Prime, First Speaker Thessaly had stopped sleeping. The evacuation was proceeding as fast as possible, but it was not fast enough. Their ships could carry perhaps 500,000 people off-world. That left billions behind. Billions of her people who would die when the sky fell. She had addressed the planet 3 times in the past week. She had told them to remain calm. She had told them their government was doing everything possible. She had told them to hold on to hope. She had lied. Then 6 days ago, the message had come. Strange aliens called humans were sending ships. They would arrive in 12 cycles. They were coming to help. Thessaly had not believed it. The Conquered had abandoned them. Why would a species they had never met do what the great powers refused to do? Her military advisors had provided what information they could gather about humanity. It was not impressive. The species was barely 200 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive by Concord standards. Their population was small. Their military was considered a minor force, barely capable of defending their own borders. "They cannot save us," General Korath had told her. "Their fleet lacks the firepower to stop the swarm. They are sending their people to die for nothing." "Then why are they coming?" Thessaly asked. Korath had no answer. Now, standing on her balcony and watching the sky, Thessaly could see the first hints of the swarm, tiny points of light that moved wrong, drifting across the stars in a pattern that meant death. In 17 days, those lights would become fire. In 17 days, everything she loved would burn. A soft chime announced a visitor. Thessaly turned to find a young female human standing in her doorway. The alien was shorter than Thessaly had expected, with dark skin and curly black hair, and eyes that seemed too soft for a soldier. "First speaker," the human said, bowing slightly. "I am Lieutenant Maria Santos, liaison officer from the human fleet. Admiral Okonkwo sent me to coordinate with your government." Thessaly studied the young alien carefully. "Your admiral is very confident, sending a liaison officer before his fleet even arrives. The admiral believes in planning ahead." Santos smiled slightly. "Also, my ship was faster than the main fleet. I arrived 2 hours ago." "Your ship was faster?" "Modified engines. Experimental technology. We wanted someone on the ground to assess the situation before the fleet arrived." Thessaly felt a strange sensation in her chest. It took her a moment to identify it as hope, a feeling she had almost forgotten. "Lieutenant Santos, I must ask you something. Your species has never met my people. We have nothing to offer you. The Concord itself has abandoned us. Why are you here?" Santos was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because you asked for help. Because your message reached our ears, and we could not pretend we didn't hear it." She paused. "First speaker, where I come from, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Your people were screaming into the darkness, and everyone else looked away. We couldn't do that. We just couldn't. Even though you might die, even then." Thessaly felt something wet on her face. She reached up and realized she was crying. In the Concord Central Chamber, the debate had turned angry. High Coordinator Vexus was demanding action. "We cannot allow the humans to establish a presence in Veloxy space. If they succeed in this rescue, it will upset the entire balance of power in this sector." "And if they fail?" the Corvalli ambassador asked. "Then we will have lost nothing." The synth representative turned its chrome head toward Vexus. "You propose we intercept the human fleet? I propose we remind them of their place. They are a minor species. They do not have the right to conduct military operations in conquered territory without authorization. The Veloxy are Concord members. They requested aid from all species. The humans are responding to that request. The humans are responding to a request we officially declined. That makes their intervention illegal." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what Vexus was really saying. The Rathani Dominion was afraid. The humans had hidden their true capabilities for 2 centuries, and now those capabilities were being revealed. If the humans succeeded at Veloxy Prime, the galaxy would know that the young species was far more powerful than anyone had believed. The Corvalli ambassador spoke carefully. "If we intercept the human fleet, we would be condemning the Veloxy to extinction." "The Veloxy were already condemned," Vexus said. "We voted on this. Their fate was decided. Decided by us, not by them, not by the humans." "What difference does that make?" The Corvalli's silver skin rippled with emotion. "High Coordinator, I watched the human ships depart their staging area. Do you know what I observed? I saw crews volunteering for what they knew might be a suicide mission. I saw captains pushing their vessels beyond safe limits because every hour mattered. I saw an entire species mobilizing not for conquest or profit, but because strangers were in danger." She leaned forward, her forearms spreading wide. "We are the great powers of the galaxy. We have ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. And in all that time, have any of us ever done what the humans are doing now? Have any of us ever risked everything for beings we had never met?" Vexus had no answer. "The humans are not our enemies," the Corvalli continued. "They are our shame. They are showing us what we forgot how to be." The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. In the darkness of slipspace, the human fleet continued its journey. 200 warships and 50 support vessels, carrying 30,000 crew members who had volunteered to save strangers. Admiral Okonkwo received hourly updates on the asteroid swarm's progress. The math was brutal. Even with their full fleet, they would be fighting a battle they could not win through conventional means. They would need to destroy millions of tons of rock while protecting a planet full of civilians. They would need to hold the line for hours, maybe days, while the swarm kept coming. He called a fleet-wide conference, his face appearing on screens throughout the formation. In approximately 4 hours, we will drop out of slip space at Veloxy Prime. We will immediately engage the leading edge of the asteroid swarm. Our mission is simple. Stop the rocks, save the people. He paused, letting the words sink in. I will not lie to you. This will be the hardest fight any of us has ever faced. We will lose ships. We will lose friends. Some of us will not go home. His voice hardened. But I want you to understand something. 4 billion people are counting on us. 4 billion people who have never seen a human face, who cannot pronounce our names, who have nothing to offer us except their gratitude. They sent a message into the darkness begging for help, and we answered. That is who we are. That is what we do. He looked directly into the camera. Today, the galaxy will learn what happens when humanity decides to save someone. Today, they will learn to fear our kindness as much as they fear our anger. Today, we show them all. 4 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of slip space at the edge of the Veloxy system. Admiral Okonkwo stood on his bridge and looked at the tactical display. The asteroid swarm filled half the screen, a river of death stretching across the void. At its leading edge, rocks the size of mountains were already entering the outer reaches of the system. Behind him, his crew waited in tense silence. Okonkwo opened a channel to all ships. All vessels, weapons free. Target the largest asteroids first. Do not let anything through. He took a deep breath. Let's show them what humans are made of. The first missiles launched into the darkness, and the battle for Veloxy Prime began. The first wave of asteroids met the human fleet like a wall of death meeting a line of fire. Nuclear missiles streaked through the void at impossible speeds. Kinetic impactors, simple rods of metal accelerated to fractions of light speed, slammed into mountain-sized rocks and shattered them into clouds of gravel. Plasma lances cut through iron and stone, splitting asteroids that had traveled unchanged through space for millions of years. The explosions lit up the darkness like new stars being born. Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Defiance. His tactical display showed hundreds of contacts, enemy and friendly, moving in a deadly dance across the outer system. Every few seconds, an asteroid winked out of existence. Every few minutes, a human ship reported damage. Sir, we're destroying them faster than projected, his tactical officer reported. But the swarm is denser than our estimates. For every rock we kill, 3 more are coming behind it. Then we kill those 3 too, Okonkwo said, and the 3 after that, and however many come after those. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all ships. Tell them to push forward. I want our destroyers in among the swarm, breaking up the larger clusters. Sir, that will put them directly in the impact zone. I know. Send the signal. Across the fleet, captains received the order with grim understanding. Moving into the swarm meant death for some of them. But staying back meant death for everyone on Veloxy Prime. The destroyer Resilience was the first to advance. Captain David Kim was 42 years old. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth. He had joined the fleet 30 years ago because he believed in something, though he had sometimes forgotten what that something was. Now, watching the asteroid swarm fill his viewport, he remembered. All hands, this is the captain. We are moving into the swarm to engage at close range. Our job is to break up the large clusters before they reach firing range of the planet. This is what we trained for. This is what we signed up for. Make me proud. The Resilience surged forward, her engines burning at full power. Behind her, 6 other destroyers followed. They hit the edge of the swarm like wolves attacking a herd. At close range, their weapons were devastating. Plasma cannons vaporized rocks at point-blank range. Missiles detonated in chain reactions that cleared entire corridors through the debris field. The destroyers weaved and dodged, their pilots pushing human reflexes to the absolute limit. Captain Kim's voice rang through his bridge. Target that cluster at bearing 27 Mark IV. That's a city killer. Don't let it through. His weapons officer opened fire. The cluster shattered, but fragments sprayed in all directions. One piece, roughly the size of a house, spun directly toward the Resilience. There was no time to dodge. The impact tore through the destroyer's port side, killing 18 crew members instantly. Atmosphere screamed out into the void. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing the breach but trapping survivors in damaged compartments. Kim grabbed his console as the ship shuddered. Damage report. Decks 4 through 7 are gone, sir. We've lost main sensors and port weapons. Engineering reports reactor is stable, but we're down to 60% thrust. Kim looked at his display. The swarm was still coming. His ship was crippled, but she could still fight. Continue firing. Target anything larger than 10 meters. Sir, we should fall back. The ship can still fight. We're not leaving until we can't fight anymore. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Okonkwo received word of the Resilience's damage. He also received word that she was still fighting. That was humanity in a single image, he thought, bleeding and broken and still throwing punches. Signal from the Veloxi government, his communications officer announced. First speaker Thessaly is requesting to speak with you directly. Okonkwo nodded. The main screen flickered and showed a Veloxi female, her alien features drawn with exhaustion and fear. Behind her, through a window, he could see the sky over her capital city. Admiral Okonkwo, she said, her voice translated through the ship's systems. I am watching your ships die for my people. I do not understand why. Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. How did you explain something so basic that it shouldn't need explanation? First speaker, do you have children? I have 3. They are in a shelter beneath the government building. We are trying to get them on an evacuation ship, but there is not enough room. When I was young, Okonkwo said, my grandmother told me a story. She lived through terrible times, wars, famines, diseases. She saw humanity at its worst. But she also saw something else. She saw strangers risk their lives to help people they had never met. She saw enemies become friends because someone decided hatred was not worth the cost. He leaned forward. She told me that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our weapons. It's our stubbornness. We refuse to accept that some people deserve to die while others look away. We refuse to believe that compassion is weakness. Outside, another asteroid exploded in nuclear fire. Your people sent a message into the darkness, begging for help. The great powers of the galaxy did their calculations and decided you weren't worth saving. But my people heard your cry, and we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't pretend we didn't hear. Because if we did, we wouldn't be human anymore. Thessaly's eyes glistened with moisture. And if you fail, if the swarm cannot be stopped, then we fail together. But we will not fail alone, and neither will you. The connection ended. Okonkwo turned back to his tactical display. The battle was reaching a critical phase. The destroyer Never Surrender had been fighting for 6 hours straight. Her captain, Commander Wei Chen, had not slept in 2 days. Her crew was exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination and nothing else. But they were still fighting. Commander, we have a problem. Her sensor officer's voice was tight with fear. Large asteroid cluster, bearing 09 Mark II. 27 objects, largest approximately 3 kilometers diameter. They're on direct approach to the evacuation corridor. Wei felt her blood run cold. The evacuation corridor was the protected zone where Veloxi transport ships were carrying civilians to safety. If that cluster hit the corridor, thousands of ships would be destroyed. Millions of lives would be lost. Can we intercept? Yes, but we don't have the firepower to destroy them all. We can maybe get half before they reach the corridor. Half wasn't enough. Half meant millions dead. Wei looked at her bridge crew. They were young, most of them. They had families waiting for them back home. They had futures they had planned to live. What's our reactor status? Stable. Why? Wei took a deep breath. Because we're going to overload it. Full power to engines. Set a collision course for the center of that cluster. Silence fell over the bridge. Commander, her first officer said slowly, that would kill us, yes. But it would also detonate our reactor in the middle of that cluster. The explosion would destroy every rock within 100 kilometers. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've run the numbers. This is the only way to save the evacuation corridor. Wei stood up from her chair. Any of you who want to leave, do it now. Get to the escape pods. I won't think less of you. Nobody moved. Commander, her weapons officer said, a young man barely 20 years old. We didn't come here to run away. We came here to save people. If this is what it takes, then this is what we do. Wei felt tears running down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Set the course. All hands prepare for impact. The Never Surrender accelerated toward the cluster. Her engines burned so hot that the hull began to glow. Asteroids flashed past on all sides, near misses that would have been kills against a slower ship. The Veloxy transport ships watched in confusion as the human destroyer raced past them, heading directly into the wall of death. At the last moment, Commander Wei opened a channel to the fleet. Never surrender, she said. That's what we named the ship. Never surrender. Remember that. Remember what we did here. Remember that humans don't give up. The Never Surrender slammed into the heart of the cluster at full speed. Her reactor, pushed far beyond its safety limits, detonated in a burst of energy that turned night into day. When the light faded, the cluster was gone. The evacuation corridor was clear. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Okonkwo watched the Never Surrender's final transmission with tears in his eyes. He added her name to the list of ships lost. It was getting longer by the hour, but the line was holding. Against all odds, against all calculations, the line was holding. The battle had been raging for 18 hours when the last hope made her final run. Captain Marcus Williams had lost half his crew to asteroid impacts. His ship was venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches. His weapons were nearly depleted. His engines were failing. And directly ahead of him, the largest asteroid in the entire swarm was heading straight for Veloxy Prime. It was 10 kilometers across, a mountain of iron and rock that would hit the planet with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons. Nothing in the human fleet could stop it. Nothing except a direct impact from a ship willing to die. Williams opened a channel to Admiral Okonkwo. Admiral, I'm looking at the big one. My ship is done anyway. Let me finish this. There was a long pause before Okonkwo replied. Captain Williams, I cannot order you to do this. I'm not asking for orders, sir. I'm asking for permission. Another pause. Permission granted. Godspeed, Marcus. Williams turned to his surviving crew. Get to the pods, all of you. That's an order. His first officer shook her head. Sir, with respect, someone needs to steer. The computer can handle it. No, sir, it can't. You know it can't. The approach vector needs constant adjustment to hit the core. She sat down at her console. I'm staying. 3 other crew members moved to their stations. Williams looked at them for a long moment, then he nodded. Let's kill that rock. The last hope accelerated toward the mountain. Her engines screamed as they burned the last of their fuel. Her crew worked their stations with steady hands, making tiny adjustments to keep them on course. On Veloxy Prime, billions of people watched the sky. They saw the mountain coming. They saw the tiny human ship racing to meet it. They held their breath. The last hope hit the asteroid at just the right angle, just the right speed. The impact triggered her overloaded reactor, and for a moment, a new sun burned in the sky over Veloxy Prime. When the light faded, the mountain was gone, shattered into millions of fragments too small to cause harm. First speaker. Thessaly fell to her knees and wept. The battle continued for another 12 hours. But the worst had passed. The human fleet, battered and bleeding, had broken the back of the swarm. Smaller rocks still fell, but the Veloxy defense systems could handle them. Admiral Okonkwo stood on his bridge and looked at the casualty reports. 47 ships lost, 8,000 crew members dead. The cost had been terrible, but 4 billion people were still alive. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. The swarm is broken. Veloxy Prime is saved. We did what we came here to do. His voice cracked slightly. To everyone we lost today, thank you. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. He paused. To everyone still alive, well done. Rest now? You've earned it. On Veloxy Prime, first speaker. Thessaly stepped onto her balcony and looked at the sky. It was full of debris, glowing fragments burning up in the atmosphere like shooting stars. Somewhere up there, human ships floated in the darkness. Human crews rested after the longest fight of their lives. Human dead drifted in the void. Heroes who had given everything for strangers. Thessaly raised her hand in a gesture of respect, the highest honor her people could give. "Thank you," she whispered. "We will never forget." Admiral Okonkwo's broadcast traveled at the speed of light through the Ovalaxy system, but it did not stop there. Concord relay stations picked up the signal and passed it along their networks. Within hours, his words reached every corner of civilized space. Billions of beings watched recordings of human ships flying into death. They saw the Never Surrender's final charge. They saw the Last Hope killing the Mountain. They heard Okonkwo's message to his fleet, and they felt something stir in their hearts. On the Thessan homeworld, the matriarch sat in her throne room and watched the footage for the third time. Her species had ruled their sector of space for 8,000 years. They had built an empire on strength and discipline and careful calculation. They had never risked anything for strangers. Now she watched these young aliens, these humans, dying for a species they had never met. "Bring me the military council," she said to her attendant. "Immediately." The council arrived within minutes. 8 admirals, the commanders of the greatest fleet in the sector. They stood before their matriarch and waited. "How long would it take our fleet to reach Valoxy Prime?" she asked. The admirals exchanged confused glances. Admiral Vorthax, the eldest, stepped forward. "Matriarch, the humans have already saved the Valoxy. The battle is over. The battle against the asteroid swarm is over, but the humans have lost nearly a quarter of their fleet. They are vulnerable. They are exhausted, and they are alone in a system that the Concord considers its territory." The matriarch leaned forward. "How long?" Vorthax considered. 12 cycles at maximum speed. "Then go. Take the first fleet. Go to Valoxy Prime and stand with the humans." The admirals stared at their ruler in shock. The Thessan had remained neutral in galactic politics for centuries. They did not take sides. They did not involve themselves in other species conflicts. "Matriarch," Vorthax said carefully, "may I ask why?" The matriarch pointed at the screen, where a recording of Commander Wei's final transmission was playing on loop. "Because I am tired of being ashamed. Because our people have forgotten what courage looks like. Because when I die and meet my ancestors, I do not want to tell them that I sat on my throne while better beings than me gave everything for strangers." She stood, her ancient body straightening with purpose. "The humans have shown the galaxy what honor means. We will not let them stand alone." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On the Corvally homeworld, the Council of Speakers debated for only an hour before voting unanimously to send their merchant fleet to Valoxy Prime. They were not warships, but they could help with evacuation and supply. They could show that the humans were not alone. On the Rathani homeworld, High Coordinator Vexus watched the political situation spiral beyond his control. His own people were demanding action, not against the humans, for them. Protest movements were forming in every major city, citizens holding signs with human words they had learned from the broadcast. Never surrender, never forget. Vexus had spent his entire career building the Rathani Dominion's power through calculation and careful manipulation. Now he watched that power crumble because a species of primitives had done something he never considered possible. They had made the galaxy feel ashamed. "Dispatch the 3rd Fleet to Valoxy Prime," he said to his staff. "Full humanitarian support, medical ships, supply vessels, engineering crews, everything we have." High Coordinator, that would effectively admit that our previous decision was wrong. Our previous decision was wrong. The humans proved that. Now we either adapt or we become irrelevant. Even the Synth Collective, the cold machine intelligence that had watched organic life with clinical detachment for millennia, made a decision no one expected. The Synth representative addressed the Concord chamber. "We have observed human behavior during this crisis. Our probability models failed to predict it. Our strategic calculations did not account for it. We have reached a conclusion." The other representatives waited. Humans are a statistical anomaly. They do not behave according to rational self-interest. They sacrifice for strangers. They fight battles they cannot win. They refuse to accept outcomes that benefit them at the cost of others. The chrome figure paused. "This behavior is not efficient. It is not logical. but it appears to be effective. We are dispatching assets to Veloxy Prime to study this phenomenon more closely. The Concord Chamber, for the first time in its history, erupted in something that might have been laughter. At Veloxy Prime, Admiral Okonkwo was trying to manage an impossible situation. His fleet was damaged. 47 ships had been destroyed, and most of the survivors needed repairs that could only be done at a proper shipyard. His crews were exhausted, running on fumes and determination. His ammunition was nearly depleted, and now, according to his sensors, ships from half the galaxy were heading toward his position. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving messages from the Thessan, the Corvalli, the Rathani, and at least 8 other species. They're all saying the same thing. They're coming to help." Okonkwo sat down heavily in his command chair. "They're a little late." "Yes, sir, but they're coming anyway." For a long moment, the Admiral said nothing. Then slowly he began to laugh. "You know what, Lieutenant? I'll take it. Better late than never." The first Allied ships arrived 3 days later. The Thessan First Fleet was the most impressive force Okonkwo had ever seen. 200 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the human navy. They dropped out of slip space in perfect formation and immediately moved to take up defensive positions around Veloxy Prime. Matriarch Thessan herself had come with the fleet. Her face appeared on the Defiance's main screen, ancient and proud and surprisingly humble. "Admiral Okonkwo, I am Matriarch Thessan of the Thessan Dominion. We have come to stand with you." Okonkwo rose from his chair. "Matriarch, we are honored by your presence. But I must ask, why now? The battle is over. The battle against rocks is over. But you have started a different kind of battle, Admiral. A battle against the way things have always been done. A battle against the belief that the strong should ignore the weak." The matriarch's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. "That battle is just beginning, and we want to be on the right side of it." Over the next several days, more fleets arrived. Corvalli merchant ships brought food and medical supplies. Rathani engineering crews began helping repair the damaged human vessels. Even a synth delegation appeared, their chrome ships hanging in orbit, while they observed everything with their unblinking sensors. The Veloxy watched all of this with growing wonder. They had been abandoned by the galaxy, left to die alone in the darkness. Now that same galaxy was flooding their system with ships and supplies and offers of help. First speaker, Thessaly met with Admiral Okonkwo on the surface of her world, in a garden that had survived the chaos of the evacuation. They sat on stone benches under alien trees, 2 leaders trying to make sense of what had happened. "I do not understand," Thessaly admitted. "We were nothing to the conquered. A minor species, barely worth noticing. Now everyone wants to help us. What changed?" Okonkwo thought about the question carefully. "Nothing changed about you. What changed was what the galaxy saw in themselves." "I do not follow. For thousands of years, the great powers have told themselves that they are civilized, that they represent the highest values of intelligence and culture and progress. But when your people cried for help, they did nothing. They let you die because saving you wasn't profitable." He gestured at the sky, where alien ships were visible as tiny lights moving against the stars. "Then we came. Humans, primitives, newcomers. We charged into the void with our outdated ships and our crude weapons, and we saved you anyway. We died for strangers. We sacrificed everything for people we had never met." Okonkwo smiled slightly. "The great powers looked at us and saw everything they used to be, everything they had forgotten. We reminded them that civilization is not about trade agreements and political alliances. It's about caring for each other. It's about refusing to let innocence die while you look away." Thessaly was quiet for a long moment. "And you? What do you see when you look at all of this?" Okonkwo looked at the alien garden, at the strange plants and unfamiliar colors. He looked at Thessaly, a being from a species he had never known existed until a few weeks ago. "I see hope," he said. "I see the possibility that the galaxy can be better than it has been. I see a future where no one has to cry into the darkness alone." Lieutenant Maria Santos found them an hour later. She was carrying a data pad with a message from Earth. "Admiral, the United Earth Council has sent a formal statement. They want you to read it." Okonkwo took the pad and scanned the message. His eyebrows rose. The Council is declining membership in the Galactic Concord. Thessaly looked shocked. But your species has earned that membership. You have proven yourselves worthy of standing among the great powers. Why would you refuse? Because we didn't do this for membership, Okonkwo said. We didn't save your people to gain political advantage. If we joined the Concord now, it would turn our sacrifice into a transaction. Heroism exchanged for influence. That's not what this was about. He handed the pad back to Santos. The Council is proposing something different. A new alliance, not based on power or profit, but on a simple promise. What promise? That when someone cries for help, someone answers. Always. No calculations, no cost-benefit analysis. Just beings helping beings because that's what civilization is supposed to mean. Thessaly felt her hearts beating faster. And the Conquered? Will they accept this? They'll have to, because right now every species in this system is watching to see what happens next. Every being in the galaxy saw what we did here. They saw the Concord fail and humanity succeed. If the Concord refuses to change, they will lose legitimacy. They will lose respect. They will become exactly what they always claim not to be, a collection of powers who care only for themselves. He stood up and looked at the sky. The galaxy is changing, first speaker. We pushed the first domino. Now we get to watch the rest of them fall. That night, Thessaly addressed her people from the steps of her government building. Billions watched on screens across the planet. Today we are alive because of strangers, she said. Today we exist because beings we had never met heard our cry and decided that our lives mattered. The humans came for us. They died for us. They taught the galaxy a lesson that will echo through the ages. She paused, looking up at the stars. I have decided that we will be the first to sign Admiral Okonkwo's new alliance. We will pledge ourselves to the promise that no one cries alone in the darkness. We will become the kind of civilization that answers when others call for help. Across the planet, cheers erupted. Veloxi of all ages shouted their approval, but it was what happened next that truly marked the moment as historic. In orbit, the Thessan flagship signaled its support, then the Krivali, then to everyone's shock, the Rathani. One by one, the fleets that had come to Veloxi Prime pledged themselves to the new alliance. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy admitted that the old way of doing things was not good enough. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Okonkwo watched the messages pour in and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not in himself, in his species, in what humanity had started. The galaxy would never be the same. 10 years had passed since the Battle of Veloxi Prime. The galaxy was a different place now. The old Concord had dissolved, replaced by the Alliance of Answering Stars. 47 species had signed the founding charter. 47 civilizations had promised that no cry for help would ever go unanswered again. And at the heart of it all, quietly but unmistakably, was humanity. Admiral James Okonkwo had retired 3 years after the battle. His body had never fully recovered from the stress of those terrible days, but his mind remained sharp, and his legacy grew stronger with each passing year. He lived now in a small house on the coast of Africa, where he had grown up. He spent his mornings walking on the beach, watching the waves roll in from the vast ocean. He spent his afternoons reading messages from people all over the galaxy who wanted to thank him for what he had done. Most of the time, he did not reply. What was there to say? He had done what anyone should do. He had answered a cry for help. That was all. But today was different. Today he had a visitor coming. First speaker. Thessaly arrived in the afternoon, her shuttle landing softly on the beach near his home. She was older now, her alien features lined with age, but her eyes still held the same fierce intelligence that had guided her people through their darkest hour. With her came a young Veloxi female, barely more than a child. She had large eyes that sparkled with curiosity and a small bag clutched tightly in her hands. Admiral Okonkwo, Thessaly said, bowing slightly. Thank you for agreeing to see us. Okonkwo smiled and gestured for them to sit on the wooden chairs he had set up on his porch. First speaker, it's been too long. And who is this young lady? The child stepped forward shyly. My name is Vesa. I am 12 years old. I was born on the day your ships arrived at our world. Okonkwo felt his throat tighten. He remembered that day. He remembered watching his ships die, watching his people sacrifice everything to save strangers. He remembered wondering if any of it would matter. Vesa, he said softly, that's a beautiful name. My mother named me after the word for hope in our old language, the child said. She said I should never forget that hope came from the stars. Thessaly placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. Vesa wanted to meet you. She has been asking for years. I finally decided it was time. Okonkwo nodded slowly. I'm glad you came. Both of you. They sat together on the porch as the sun began to set over the ocean. Thessaly told him about the changes on Veloxy Prime. The planet had recovered from the evacuation chaos. New cities had been built. New generations had been born. The Veloxy had become one of the most active members of the Alliance, sending aid missions to species in need across the galaxy. We have a saying now, Thessaly said. When someone asks why we help strangers, we tell them, because someone helped us, because humans taught us what that means. Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. I'm glad we could help. I just wish it hadn't cost so many lives. I know, I think about them every day. Commander Way, Captain Williams, all the others. Thessaly's voice grew soft. We built a memorial on Veloxy Prime, a great tower that reaches toward the stars. Inside it, we inscribed the name of every human who died defending our world. 8,000 names, Admiral. 8,000 heroes. The old man felt tears forming in his eyes. He did not try to hide them. We also inscribed something else, Thessaly continued, a phrase from your fleet's communications. The last words Commander Way spoke before she destroyed the cluster that would have killed millions of our people. She looked at him with eyes that held a decade of gratitude. Never surrender. That is what we teach our children. Never surrender to despair. Never surrender to selfishness. Never surrender to the idea that strangers are not worth saving. Young Vesa opened her bag and pulled out a small crystal. It was clear as water, but when she held it up to the fading sunlight, it sparkled with inner fire. This is for you, she said, holding it out to Okonkwo. It is a memory crystal. Inside it are the recorded heartbeats of every Veloxy child born since the day you came. 4 million heartbeats, Admiral. 4 million lives that exist because of you. Okonkwo took the crystal with trembling hands. It was warm, as if it held living fire within its depths. I don't know what to say, he whispered. You don't have to say anything, Vesa replied. My mother told me that heroes don't need words. They need to know that what they did mattered, that the people they saved remember. She smiled, a bright expression that reminded Okonkwo of human children playing on beaches just like this one. We remember, Admiral. We will always remember. That evening, after Thessaly and Vesa had returned to their shuttle, Okonkwo sat alone on his porch and held the crystal up to the stars. 4 million heartbeats. 4 million lives. He thought about all the people who had made this possible. Lieutenant Commander Chen, who had heard the signal and refused to ignore it. The council members who had voted for mobilization. The captains and crews who had flown into Death's Mouth to save strangers. He thought about Commander Way, young and fierce, choosing to die so that others could live. He thought about Captain Williams, calm and steady, piloting his ship into a mountain of rock. They had given everything, and now, 10 years later, children were being born on a world that should have been dead. That was the legacy of humanity, Okonkwo realized, not the ships or the weapons or the technology. The legacy was the idea that strangers are worth saving, the belief that compassion is strength, not weakness, the stubborn refusal to accept that some lives matter more than others. The Concord had ruled the galaxy through power and fear. The Alliance was building something different, something based on trust and sacrifice, and the simple promise that no one would ever face the darkness alone. And it had all started with a cry for help, echoing through the void, and a species young enough to still believe that answering was the right thing to do. Okonkwo stood up slowly and walked to the edge of his porch. The ocean stretched out before him, vast and dark, reflecting the stars above. Somewhere out there, in the endless depths of space, ships were flying towards species in need. Human ships and Veloxy ships and Thessan ships and 100 others, all carrying the same message. We are coming. We heard you. You are not alone. That was the galaxy humanity had helped create. That was the future they had bled for and died for and refused to give up on. Okonkwo smiled and raised the crystal toward the sky in a silent toast. "We did it," he said softly. "We actually did it." A year later, Admiral James Okonkwo died peacefully in his sleep. He was 93 years old. His funeral was attended by representatives from every species in the Alliance. The Thessan matriarch came personally, along with First Speaker Thessaly, and thousands of Veloxi citizens who had traveled across the galaxy to pay their respects. They buried him on the beach where he had spent his final years, with the ocean on one side and the stars on the other. On his grave, they placed a simple marker with 2 words engraved in human script: "Never surrender." But it was what happened next that became legend. That night, as the mourners gathered on the beach, a light appeared in the sky. Then another. Then another. Ships from across the galaxy had gathered in Earth orbit. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all firing their lights in synchronized patterns. They spelled out a message that could be seen from the surface, a tribute to the man who had started it all. "Thank you." On the beach below, a young Veloxi child named Vessa watched the lights with tears streaming down her face. Her mother stood beside her, holding her hand. "Who was he?" a human child nearby asked, looking at the grave marker. "The man everyone came to see." Vessa looked at the boy and smiled through her tears. "He was the one who came when no one else would. He was the one who heard my people crying in the darkness and decided that we were worth saving." She looked up at the lights in the sky, at the ships from 100 worlds gathered to honor one man. He was human, and because of him, the galaxy learned what that means. The boy thought about this for a moment. "What does it mean?" Vessa looked at the ocean, at the stars, at the grave of the man who had changed everything. "It means hope," she said. "It means that no matter how dark things get, someone will always answer. Someone will always come." She squeezed her mother's hand. "It means that the universe is not as cold as it seems, because humans exist, and humans care." Above them, the ships continued their tribute, lights flashing against the darkness. And across the galaxy, in every corner of civilized space, beings of all species looked up at the stars and remembered the lesson humanity had taught them. That compassion is not weakness, that strangers are worth saving, that when someone cries into the void, begging for help, the answer should always be the same. We are coming. We are always coming. And the galaxy, once cold and calculating, had learned to tremble with something it had never felt before: hope.